The Senate is in session.
Messages from Her Excellency the President. Announcements by His Honor the President.
Minutes of a meeting held on Wednesday, 15th January 2025 for confirmation.
Mr. President, I beg to move the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, 15th of January, 2025.
The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on January 15th, 2025 be confirmed. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Okay, those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Those minutes stand confirmed. Minutes of our meeting held on Friday, March 14th, 2025 to be deferred.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, 14th of March, 2025 be deferred.
The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on Friday, the 14th of March, 2025 be deferred. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Those minutes are therefore deferred. Those are further announcements. We have apologies for absence from number of senators who are overseas, Senator Honorable Lindell Nurse, Senator Reverend Canon Dr. Rogers, Senator Dr. Crystal Drakes. We have, and also, sorry, absent overseas as well, Leader of the Senate, Senator Lisa Cummings. And indications of Kevin? Over late? Sorry, and absence, apologies for absence as well from Senator Kevin Boyce. Apologies for lateness from Senator, the Most Honorable Dr. Jerome Walcott.
Presentation of papers.
Mr. President, I'm commanded to lay the following documents. The Barbados Revenue Authority Annual Report for the financial year ended March 31st, 2022. The Financial Services Commission Annual Report for the years 2021 to 2022, 2022 to 2023, and 2023 to 2024. Loan contract number 5980 OC, between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank Program to strengthen social services in Barbados. Loan contract, again, number 5980 OCBA, between the Government of Barbados and the Corporation Andina de Fomento CAFA, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean Sector-Wide Approach Program to support the operation Roots from Cultural Heritage to Innovation in Barbados, February 21st, 2025. Reports of the Judicial Council for the years 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The National Cultural Foundation Annual Report 2021 to 2022, and the National Payment System Fees Regulations 2025.
Reports from select committees, questions to ministers, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries, personal explanations, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Senate and moved by a minister.
Senator Dr. Chantal Monroe-Knight.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the suspension of Standing Order 45-2 to be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that Standing Order 45-2 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. That Standing Order is therefore suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Introduction of bills.
Senator Dr. Monroe-Knight.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of the following bills: the Stormwater Management Bill 2025 and the Barbados National Honours and Decorations Amendment Bill 2025.
Proceed. First reading.
I beg, Mr. President, that the aforementioned bills be read first time. The Stormwater Management Bill 2025, the Barbados National Honours and Decorations Amendment Bill 2025, and as well the Seaport Industry Management Operations and Development Bill 2025.
The question is that the Stormwater Management Bill 2025, the Barbados National Honours and Decorations Amendment Bill 2025, and the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill 2025 be read a first time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. Those bills are accordingly read a first time.
Public business.
Public business is now the order of the day.
Order number 8, in the name of the acting leader of government business, to move the second reading of the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill 2025.
Senator Dr. Moronic.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill, order number 8, and the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill, Seafood Markets and Business Bill 2025 be taken as a cognate, given that both bills address issues in relation to fisheries management.
The question is that the order number 8, the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill 2025, and order number 9, the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Seafood Markets and Businesses Bill 2025 be taken as a cognate debate. Just for clarity and a reminder, this means that they have been asked to permit the policy issues related to both bills to be discussed together. However, the vote will be taken individually and separately on order number 8, which is the one we open in, and then we will go to order number 9 to simply take the vote but not engage in a second debate. Honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. We therefore consider order number 8 and number 9 as a cognate debate. Senator Dr. Moronic, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've just passed Easter, and I hope that everyone in the House had a pleasurable Easter. I did. And I also, Mr. President, if you would allow me, want to recognize the presence of persons within our honourable chamber here from the Fisheries Department. I know that we have the Chief Fisheries Officer who is here and her other colleagues as well. So like I said, I hope that we would have enjoyed Easter, but also a bit of fish as well. Mr. President, it's very interesting for me. I am one of those who are still steeped in the tradition of having fish throughout Easter. But I noted that there were several debates that I was involved in about whether or not you should still only eat fish during Easter, or whether it is only for Good Friday, or whether, you know, we eat throughout. And it was an interesting discussion because, like I said, it was, for me, not a question just because of the traditions that we had. And Mr. President, I don't know if you noted as well that we had several Barbadians who went to the beach in the sea on Good Friday. On Good Friday. I was amazed, right? So it's an interesting cultural dynamic and shift that is happening in Barbados that we perhaps need to pay some attention to. I heard lots of murmurs of unthinkable because certainly I grew up, and if you didn't want a swift lash somewhere, there was no thought that you could be going to the beach and not eating fish during Easter. But Mr. President, even as those things might be changing, there are some things that stay the same. I was very happy over the Easter period as well to participate in the Oistins Fish Festival, which is, as I think everybody knows, Oistins itself is a historic fishing village. And I was pleased to see that a number of the traditions associated with the Oistins Fish Festival, the fish boning, the greasy pole, all of those things were still part of embedded within the festival and still remain part of the traditions. But as I traversed the area over the weekend of the Oysters Fish Festival, one of the things that stayed with me, and Mr. President, I must say that I traverse that area regularly. I don't only come when there are special occasions. I don't only go when there are special occasions, but I'm a regular in the Oysters area. But just at that particular time, one of the things that stuck with me was as I was talking to a lot of the vendors, a lot of the fisher folk, it struck me that we have within Oysters perhaps, and I said this publicly, a unique story of entrepreneurship that perhaps has not been told, yeah? So we talk a lot about entrepreneurship, and particularly in some places, Black entrepreneurship, in traditional sectors of what you would call the traditional business sectors. But it struck me over the weekend that perhaps if we take a look at what is happening in Oysters and the fact that you have generations of families, whether or not they are fish vendors, boat owners, whether or not they clean the fish, whatever area they are involved in within the sector, you see generations of entrepreneurships. We can identify families whose either mothers, fathers, grandparents started, and now their children are also as well part of the ecosystem, even though perhaps they might be doing it a different way. And I think that this is an important lesson that Oysters can give us, and I would suggest perhaps that is not unique to Oysters, but that there is something in the fishing sector itself about entrepreneurship and the creation of generational wealth that we need to be able to study and take note of, particularly, Mr. President, amongst women as well. Mr. President, I also as well, don't want us to be fooled. I think that sometimes when we talk about the fishing sector, and we want to make a suggestion or assumptions about the nature of people who work within the sector. And again, from my intimate knowledge, particularly the Oysters area, many of these fisher folk, and I call them fisher folk boat owners, sometimes have multiple businesses. Sometimes they have been able, through their work, to own their own homes, Mr. President, being able to garner a level of wealth for themselves and for their families. And it suggests that there, again, is potential within the fishery sector for greater levels of employment, greater levels of growth and investment there, and to be able to expand the opportunities within the fishing sector, and that it is a place as well that people can see themselves in a sector that will offer them multiple opportunities and opportunities for advancement for themselves and for their families. And so it stands again against the argument that only those, again, within the what we would call traditional money-making sectors can be able to get ahead. And this is not to suggest, Mr. President, everybody is successful, but again, that there is a recognition that within the fishing sector, again, right throughout the ecosystem, that there is, again, like I said, potential there. And Mr. President, I am told that that potential is also shown in the fact that from 2016, when we had just 3,000 persons involved or employed within the fishing sector, that today we have double that. We have over 6,000, Mr. President. So from 2016, 3,000, we have 6,000. People do not get involved in a sector that is failing, that a sector is not growing, that a sector is not showing growth. People do not get involved in a sector in which they cannot see themselves making a pathway, Mr. President. And that growth there of people involved tells us, again, that there is something that is happening within the fishing sector that is important for us to note. And that growth within the fishing sector, Mr. President, is also matched by the level of investment that the government is making. If we take a look, as I did, Mr. President, at the estimates of revenue of an expenditure, for this financial year, you will see that government has continued to increase its investment in the sector. Mr. President, in 2022 to 2023, under Head 163, under the sub-program Fishery Services, we see an increase going from 2,945,196 in 2022-2023. We then see an increase in 2023-2024 to 3,315,000. And then in 2024-2025, an even steeper increase, Mr. President, 7 million and more, 7,269,000. And of course, we would understand over that period we had barrel. But the fact is that we note that the government doubled its investment in the fishery sector, Mr. President. We also see as well that we saw an increase in another area under the area development measures in relation to undertaking research within the sector. We see a similar increase. And I want to note that it is not only under these heads that I quoted, 163, but there's also investment happening under the heads related to markets. There is investment as well in relation to the fishery sector that will happen under the head relation to the conservation and preservation of terrestrial and the marine environment as well, so that we would see the course of government heavy investment and commitment into this sector. And while it is true that when you look at, for this financial year, that those levels of increases may stabilize, again, because we had last year Hurricane Beryl, we still see, again, a trajectory of upward and continued investment in the fishery sector by this government. Mr. President, the Central Bank report, and I want to be very careful to note and to quote it, the review of the Barbados economic performance January to December 2024, it cites that fish landings increased by 15.2%, buoyed by strong catches in the first half of the year, although Hurricane Beryl negatively impacted the fishing fleet in the latter half. And Mr. President, if you go on the fisheries site as well, you will see that they have statistics. So this is not privileged information, which would show you the fish landings for 2024. And even, I believe, Mr. President, from January 2025, you will be able to find statistics there on the fish landing and exactly the sites where you would have the most catches. And I'm painting a story, Mr. President, of growth and development within the fishery sector, of investment by government in the fishery sector, Mr. President, which is important. And I say all of that, and Mr. President, I don't want to say or to make the argument that everything is perfect, that there are no challenges. Of course, there are going to be challenges and things that we have to address, like any other sector. But we have the investment. I'm not going to be flippant, Mr. President, again about the challenges. The sector has spoken to the issue of the need for more data collection so that we are able to anticipate fish stocks, Mr. President, for us to be able to, in the future, understand the trajectory of the sector, Mr. President. We look, Mr. President, at the fact that we need stronger enforcement. So yes, the government may be able to set limits on what is fish and fish catches, but one of the weaknesses has been how do we actually enforce, Mr. President, and make sure that the needed standards are established and treated as they should within the sector. There's also the issue, Mr. President, of limited resources and capacity within the sector as well. So that there are challenges. But I also want to note, when we come to look a little bit at what is in the bills before us, Mr. President, where the government, through its legislative process, is trying to make sure that we have a comprehensive frame which attempts to address these issues. And Mr. President, I am also not going to say that the legislation is everything. Legislation can provide that framework, but it's tied together by a number of other ongoing initiatives and ongoing developments that are already taking place. Yeah? So it's important for us to note that this legislation is not necessarily only about starting from scratch. We're not starting from scratch. we are creating a legislative framework that moves us from where we are now into a modern fishery sector, but that it is as well shored up by existing programs and investment that is already taking place, Mr. President. I recently had a meeting with the executive of the Oysters Fisher Folk, and they identified, again, some of their challenges. They want more work done in the boatyard, better bathroom facilities as well, particularly for women, improved security. And these are all areas, Mr. President, that I know that the minister and his ministries, the chief fishery officers, are aware of and working on already to be able to ensure that we can create, again, a better platform for the comfort and for the growth of those within the fishery sector. Mr. President, these two pieces of legislation that we are debating today, as I indicated, both of them in relation to the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill, and also as well the Seafood Markets and Business Bill, are really, when we look at some of the provisions, are intended, like I said before, to move the sector forward. And it is a recognition that we are currently now under a 1993 Act, and much has changed, Mr. President, within the sector, and much is projected to change, and that is important, because the bills before us are not seeking to make corrections to what we have now, but also as well projecting up to as much as 2030 as to how the sector needs to be able to look and to evolve and to address some of those pressing issues that may arise in the future. It represents, Mr. President, as well, these two bills, a learning from our experiences of Hurricane Beryl as well. Because while most of us will want to stop at that moment of Hurricane Beryl and what government would have done to help the sector, or some would argue what we did not do, that is one moment. And we have to ask ourselves, what happens next? How do we ensure, as we would say in sustainable development language, that we build back better? How do we ensure that we build resilience? And we only do that by making sure that we build a framework, again, and I keep using the word, that is far-reaching, Mr. President, that takes into consideration not only the technological advances that need to be in place, not only addressing the current challenges I talked about just in terms of things like data and enforcement, but also as well, how do we make sure that our critical stakeholders, Mr. President, continue to walk with us, The fishery sector perhaps is a little bit unique because of the types of stakeholders that are involved. And their voices and their experiences are extremely important, again, to future-proofing. And you would see in the pieces of legislation as we consider them, efforts to ensure that they are continually brought on board, heard, and that their voices and experiences are valued within the process, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to come first of all to the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill. And Mr. President, this bill is extremely comprehensive, as I would have said before. I think it contains something like 444 parts. And so, Mr. President, I won't be able to speak to every single one of them, but I will identify some of the critical areas that I think that we should note in respect of this bill. Part 3 of the bill, Mr. President, establishes an advisory council to advise the minister and make recommendations on fisheries matters. And if you look at the first schedule to the bill, you would see the composition of that advisory council, as well as some of the tenets of the Constitution in relation to that advisory council. And one of the things that struck me, Mr. President, when you look at the composition, is the range of experts that will be involved on that advisory council, whether they be in fisheries management, aquaculture, Mr. President, but also, as well, I noted things like project management and finance. Again, so the complete ecosystem of what is needed in order to be able to provide the necessary advice for the growth of the sector in the future, this advisory council is seeking to make sure that it is embedded. And I think that is an important feature because the legislation is suggesting to us that it is already taken on board, as I said, the need to make sure that we involve critical experts and stakeholders in the ongoing growth of the sector, and that there will be continued need for input and advice as well. And we see then that we have this advisory council. Part 4 provides for the establishment of a fisheries management and development plan as well. And again, also critical, and it indicates that the Chief Fisheries Officer, in consultation with stakeholders, Mr. President, in consultation with stakeholders, to have the implementation of that plan, and that plan is to be reviewed every 5 years, Mr. President. Again, responding to the dynamism within the sector, responding to the need to be able to include stakeholders, and importantly, when we have had debates on similar legislation, I know that other honourable senators would have asked, so what is the plan? How are we going to be able then to see the rollout? What are the next steps of the legislation? And again, this legislation is identifying that within the framework that we will have this inclusive plan that will be implemented very much to be able to define as we go on, and then to be able to review the growth and development of the sector as well. Part 5, Mr. President, quite notably deals with data and information. And if you would recall, I had identified the issue of data and information as one of the challenges within the sector. And again, the legislative framework is speaking specifically to this challenge of data and information, Mr. President. And it is because it is we note again that if we're talking about building resilience, if we're talking about growth and development, if we're talking about future-proofing, we need to be able to do that based on facts and knowledge of what is actually happening. And you would see then that under Part 5, it makes provision for the collection of information for those who are involved in the sector to be obligated to provide information that would allow for the accurate collection of the data as well, and allow us then to be able to fill those data gaps, which are critical to planning and which are critical to the Fisheries Division, and for us as a country to be able to make sure that we can optimize the sector as well. Mr. President, I jump, and I also note as well that Part 10 establishes an observer program as well. And this observer program also has a significant role in data collection. That observer program will allow for independent people as well to collect reliable and accurate data for scientific, management, and compliance purposes as well. Of course, it will be confidential as well, but it allows then for us, yes, to collect data from those that are indirectly involved, but then as well to also make sure that we have independent data collection. And this is not something that you often see as well. So again, the legislation is building in a platform of accountability within the process, not just depending on what government will do, government's framework, government's collection, but as well making sure that we have an independent persons being able as well to make sure that we collect data. Part 7, Mr. President, identifies the provisions for marine pollution, again, which is important. If we are talking about growth and development, we have to talk about preservation. This is often something that we do not look at. What happens when people offload things like offal and other things into the marine environment, and how that will affect our fish stocks, how that will also erode, Mr. President, the environment as well. And this is directly addressed within this legislation, Mr. President, at Part 7. Part 11 and 12, Mr. President, look at certification, insurance, and registration of boats. Again, all extremely important, extremely important. One of the big challenges that I noted that the fisheries sectors faced, particularly boat owners in the wake of Hurricane Beryl, was that many of them, Mr. President, many of the boats were not insured. it means that they lost everything in one foul swoop. And I know that we see sometimes insurance as being expensive, as being something coincidental, but it is a means to be able to protect our investment. And therefore, the legislation identifies different aspects and in different ways that we are asking the sector to become insured in order to be able to protect themselves, Mr. President. It also makes provision for certification, again, to allow us to be able to know the actual number of boats and vessels that are actually involved. Because we hear lots of wild numbers about this amount is involved, this amount of boats, but then we want to know how many of them are actually active, Mr. President. And so that certification and registration process, again, will allow us to have that level of accuracy. And if we have that level of accuracy, Mr. President, then means that we can better plan, not only in the context of when we have an emergency or a disaster as well, but better plan to build capacity and better plan to be able to build out the necessary ecosystem to be able to service the sector. So that certification, insurance, and registration of those vessels operating within the sector is extremely important. Part 16 as well, Mr. President, covers licenses. Part 17 covers permits, all again to making sure that we are able to have information on what is happening within the sector, establish standards within the sector. And Mr. President, this is important. And we may not have a lot of it now, but you can have within our fisheries sector, and we will have limited fish stocks. And if we are not able then to actually count and identify based on permits who is fishing where, what it is that they are catching, then it means, again, we may face depletion and we not even be able to know that we are at that point. And again, the legislation anticipates that. It has particular provisions in relation to depletion of the fishing stock, but also as well through these provisions for registration, for permits and licenses as well. Also, Mr. President, making sure as well that people are operating vessels that are safe and that meet the standards that are specified as well. Part 19 and 20 as well deal with derelict and abandoned fishing vessels as well. And Mr. President, I know this again intimately in the Oistins boatyard. There are instances where you have the boatyard may seem full. Nobody else can get in, but when you go and you do the inspection, some of those boats that are there are derelict. And we want, Mr. President, to make sure, one, that we have space for everybody, and that those derelict boats then can be treated. There are some instances, Mr. President, I've had to work with one of the local fishermen in Oistins, in which the boat was deemed to be derelict, but moved from the boatyard, but also as well see if there are ways for remediation. But we want to be able, Mr. President, to have order and standards within the sector, within boatyards, to make sure that there is space for all of the vessels, and therefore we have provision for the treatment of those derelict and abandoned fishing vessels as well. Part 21 covers fish quality and safety as well. It designates the Fishery Division, the Chief Fisheries Officer and her team, as the competent authority for control and safety of fish and fish products for human consumption, under the auspices of the Ministry of Health, of course. And it also prohibits the sale or export of adulterated, unsafe, healthy fish or fish products, and includes measures for proper disposal or reuse of fish waste. Mr. President, is extremely important. It is perhaps something that we take for granted. We trust that everybody will be upstanding, that everybody will sell us fresh fish. But we cannot make legislation, Mr. President, only for those that are doing the right things. We have to make legislation that covers and protects in case there are people that would want to do untoward. And therefore, this provision is making sure that we are able to ensure the safety of Barbadians as they consume fish. and making sure that there is a competent authority to be able to oversee. And again, that challenge that I mentioned previously of how do we kind of monitor, how do we kind of ensure compliance, the establishment then of that competent authority in order then to have the oversight and then to be accountable for ensuring of this provision. Mr. President, interestingly as well, Part 23 addresses climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and disaster risk management. Extremely important. We talk all the time about climate change and its impact. And again, we can't talk about Hurricane Beryl and not talk about climate change and not talk about its direct impact. And we saw that, the whole of Barbados saw that. But within the legislation, it is embedded that recognition there of the importance of it, but also as well how we are able to develop a frame that allows us again to address and anticipate some of those impacts. So that Part 23, in its looking at climate change, mitigation, adaptation, allows us to be able to ensure that we have the necessary infrastructure that is built in to build the necessary resilience as well. Part 24 covers fisheries and energy. And like I said, Mr. President, the comprehensive nature of this legislation is to be lauded. It is to be absolutely lauded, Mr. President. Part 24 covers fisheries and energy. And most of us on the face of it would say, well, what's the connection? What's the connection? Fisheries and energy as well. But Mr. President, fuel. How much fuel does it take for the boats to be able to go out? What about infusing renewable energies within the fishing sector? Again, to enhance, Mr. President, its resilience and its footprint and the ecology that happens within the marine environment as well. So Part 24 covers fisheries and energy as well, and the need for us to be able to look at the instilling of renewable energy within the sector as well. Part 25 addresses gender in fisheries. And again, this is interesting, Mr. President. I would have noted earlier when I began and I talked about entrepreneurship within the fishing sector, that the majority of those, in some instances, and I said the majority under correction, but I believe I'm correct, when you look at the entire ecosystem, are women. And again, oftentimes we don't see the connection and the importance of treating to these issues, recognizing gender as critical, recognizing gender as part of the essential frame that needs to be protected, as well need to be understood and needs to be recognized. And we do so at our own peril, Mr. President. And in this comprehensive legislation as well, we would see that we have a Part 25 provision, again, that speaks to gender in fisheries as well. And I am told, Mr. President, that there is an all-female group that is doing tremendous work within the fishing sector, group doing the Fish Offal project as well, and are building capacity there, and are also as well turning something that you would normally throw away now into something that is usable as well. And we have Part 27, looking at the introduction of corporate social responsibility as well. Part 29, Mr. President, deals with fisheries and the Marine Spatial Plan, again, making linkages with that. When the government, and we would have debated it in this chamber, this honourable chamber, do the debt for a nature swap with the IDB and Nature Conservancy, the delivery of our Marine Spatial Plan was one of the outputs of that debt swap. And within this legislation, you see the connection here between that and fisheries as well. And one of the key areas, Mr. President, identified is the demarcating of our exclusive economic zone to be able to fully realize the potential within those particular zones, and for us to be able to work at making sure that we can have clear demarcations within that economic zone for different types of activities that can take place as well. Part 30, Mr. President, is also exciting. It introduces the Fisheries-Specific Payment for Ecosystem Services, or PES. And this is extremely innovative, Mr. President. This means that fisherfolk, in consultation with the Chief Fisheries Officer and stakeholders, can develop programs where they are paid, Mr. President, paid for conservation activities. They're paid for conservation activities. I really am excited about this provision and the ability for our fisherfolk, again, to have another stream of income, perhaps for activities that they do themselves on a day-to-day basis. But no, we are rewarding those efforts and recognizing them as critical in the conservation of the entire sector. And so that this establishes now that payment system. And people as well who help the industry by providing data on their catches or environmental observations could also be paid, Mr. President, under conservation contracts. And I look forward to the rollout of this particular initiative because it is an exciting and perhaps innovative way that other sectors as well can look to implement and to encourage conservation efforts as well. I'm thinking, Mr. President, that I need to go to the Barbados Water Authority and ask them if we can't do our own version of this PES. But that's another discussion as well, Mr. President. Mr. President, Part 37, I'll come into the end of this and I go to the other bill, deals with enforcement. And again, I pulled this out because, again, of the challenges that I would have identified previously, again, of enforcement. It details the powers of the Chief Fisheries Officer and any authorized officer, be it Customs, Police, Coast Guard, to enforce the Act. It also provides for immunity of those officers for acts done in good faith under the Act so that they can perform their duties without fear or personal and legal action as well. Part 41, Mr. President, covers fisheries and tourism. So we had fisheries and energy, we had the impact of climate change, and now we have a specific provision that covers fisheries and tourism as well. So the Act, looking at all of the critical areas of interlinkages for the sector to ensure, Mr. President, that we speak to that. And again, that we speak to that not only in a way that thinks about what is happening currently, but for future growth and the impact that, again, those interlinkages will have, fisheries and tourism on each other, and the extent to which we can establish a frame as well in order to be able to make sure that the growth is measured. We would know, Mr. President, that we have a number of tourists who like to do recreational fishing. Just as an aside, Mr. President, I was having some debate about the extent to which crabbing is still part of the Barbadian tradition. And they tell me that in St. Andrew, but I have, and I know up to last year, some of my family were still doing crabbing down in Graham Hall Swamp. Some people are arguing with me that no, that we don't have any more crabs down there, but I am going to make sure that I have the evidence to prove that. But again, what we are tending to do, Mr. President, in relation to looking at fisheries and tourism is, again, to make sure that we can moderate and balance that. Our need for recreational fishing by tourists, etc., and us being able to make sure that we do not have further depletion as well. Part 43 establishes the Barbados Institute for Fisheries and Fisheries-Related Studies. Again, very important, extremely important. And this is one, Mr. President, I'm going to say the fishery sector probably took from the water sector, because in the water sector we're working on establishing a water academy. So I see now that the fishery sector is going to establish its own institute for studies, which is again extremely important, Mr. President. And it adds as well the legitimacy and the hard legitimacy of the sector, again, because we do not associate it, for whatever reason, with academics, with study, and we will see now within the legislation that this institute as well will provide for further education and training up and building capacity. If you remember, I noted capacity and resources as one of the challenges. And then we have this Institute for Fisheries and Fishery-related Studies as well that would help us again to fill some of those training and capacity building gaps and making sure that we can keep ahead of what is coming within the sector, Mr. President. Keeping on the cutting edge, keeping on what is best in class for the sector as well. And so that this institute is intended to be a major plank, as I keep saying, in future-proofing for the sector as well. Mr. President, I want to also as well indicate that, like I said before, that this particular bill is extremely extensive, and I've only sought, Mr. President, to highlight a number of areas and provisions within the bill. But if we look at the entirety of the bill, we would see again that it is extremely comprehensive, covers several areas that look at conservation, preservation, Mr. President, ensures that there is serious fines where there need to be serious fines, Mr. President, for breaches. It ensures that we will have the necessary standards and adherence and compliance as well to those standards, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I turn now to the bill, the Sustainable Fisheries Development, Management and Development, Seafood Markets and Business Bill. This one is, of course, a little shorter, but no less important, Mr. President. It establishes a regulatory regime for the management and operation of seafood markets and seafood businesses, as well as a regulatory system for the management of seafood supply chain sector as well, again, which is extremely important for us. Again, so both of these bills covering that full ecosystem for the fisheries sector as well. Part 3 of the bill sets out the regulation of seafood businesses. It establishes how to license a seafood business and the requirements under the Ministry of Health regulations that must be met for any food businesses. Again, health and safety, making sure that there is safe consumption, Mr. President. There are serious illnesses that can occur, and where we will not have had regulations, the necessary standards before, we are seeing them now being established through this particular bill. Part 4 deals with processors of fish and other seafood. It established a national, Mr. President, a national scheme for processors of fish, lobster, octopus, etc., to foster growth and support of fish processors and the seafood industry. The scheme's purpose is to set clear standards for procedures and documentation to enhance efficiency in seafood processing. And, Mr. President, again, extremely important because this is part of the capacity building. It's a national scheme, Mr. President, that will be established. Again, building capacity and setting standards as well, and other activities that will redound to the benefit of the fish processors and other kinds of seafood as well. It will set standards for the formalities, procedures, and the documentary requirements, Mr. President, as I said before. Part 5 covers fish trawling and commercial operations as well. This is not happening in Barbados now. Again, Mr. President, again, an instance where the legislation is not thinking only about the current situation again, but projecting for the future as well. And Mr. President, Part 6, Mr. President, again, I want us to take special note of, addresses traditional fisheries knowledge and associated commerce. Mr. President, I used to, in my former life, used to do quite a bit of research and writing, and also as well working with a number of what we would call civil society actors, of which Fisher-Folk was one. I actually would have worked quite a bit with Barnufo to do lots of training and provide training and to do some studies and to work with them to build capacity. And one of the complaints that we continually have within this sector and others is that you would have people who would come in, interview them, take their knowledge, and then put on a cover page that it is theirs and never even credit the original owners for that knowledge. And so the value of what they would have been doing, the practices that they would have learned that they now expend to the sector for its growth and development was not attributed to them and not valued as well. And therefore we have a clause, Mr. President, at Part 6 that addresses fisheries knowledge and traditional knowledge and associated commerce. And I really hope that we appreciate the importance of this, the recognition, again, that this sector, again, that we see sometimes, yes, we go and we buy our fish and we go up to, oysters on a Friday night, that it is more than that. There is more than that, that there is actual value in the ways that we as Barbadians and those involved in the fishery sectors undertake the business of what it is that they do, Mr. President, even the way perhaps that we do certain techniques. There is value in that. That is traditional knowledge. And that there are a number now, Mr. President, of international treaties that are also respecting this notion of traditional knowledge and its values as well. So again, lauding this particular bill, but also the specific part that speaks to the traditional fisheries knowledge and associated commerce. And it says that if someone has deep experience in some area of fishing under this bill, they would be able to sell that knowledge. Once the program is set up, they'll be able, Mr. President, to sell that knowledge. So you can be retired, because there are a number of retired persons involved in the fishery sector who have tremendous knowledge there. And now, again, we're opening up an opportunity for them also as well to continue to be able to extend their livelihood within the sector as well through this program. And I think that it is extremely important. Mr. President, as I close, I also want to note that, again, and this is important because within this honourable chamber, as we have debated other pieces of legislation, again, the honourable members will also ask what comes next, what happens, how are we going to make sure that implementation happens. And I'm happy to say that when we look at what has happened within the fishery sector, we see already, one, as I showcase, the level of investment that has taken place and the work, but also this legislation is encased within a wider spectrum of work that is happening. Mr. President, just recently, I believe it was just last week, time is moving so quickly, I'm not sure, so don't quote me, but I think it was last week, in collaboration with the United Nations Development Programme and the government of Japan, the ministry launched a $2 million program, Mr. President, that is intended to build resilience again within the fisheries sector. It will provide, Mr. President, for the building of capacity. Actually, one of the things that I noted was that Barnufo, as a critical stakeholder as well, will have its capacity built, again, through training. There will be some funds for it through administration as well, but it would also as well help with upliftments for the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex, as well as oysters. It will provide for conceptual drawings. So, Mr. President, already, we see the investment that this legislation will sit in order to ensure that the provisions and the growth and the development happens as well. I talked about before what was happening with the Marine Spatial Plan already that is going. I also want to note as well that the government had secured, I believe it was a World Bank loan as well, that would also as well intended to build out the capacity and ensure the growth within the sector. So, Mr. President, I hope that within these two pieces of legislation that we are seeing commitment by the government of Barbados in the fishery sector, not in the sector just in and of itself, but to the people within the sector, not treating them as just being instrumental, but many of the provisions in here seek to make sure that they are included, seek to value their contribution as well. Sometimes something, again, that we do not often do. The two pieces of legislation, Mr. President, in all, as we take them all together, again, is projecting for the growth of a sector. Many people now are looking to the blue economy And Mr. President, we were, again, as Barbados, one of the first, I would say, island states to talk about this notion of the blue economy in a very big way. And we are showing that it's not just about talking, but that we will walk the walk in terms of what it is that we are seeking to do. Mr. President, I am obliged, and I beg that this bill be read a second time.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Chantal Monroe-Knight. Senator Malalou.
Mr. President, thank you for recognizing me. It is quite lonely over here today, as you may have noticed. Very lonely. But let me be clear, I do not rise in opposition in any way whatsoever. In fact, this is not an area where I profess to have any expertise, but I have two small points to make. One area where I have experience and not expertise is the East Coast. And I heard Senator Monroe-Knight talking about various places where crabbing, etc., went on. And I can confirm that there is still some crabbing in the areas of St. Joseph and St. Andrew. And I myself do enjoy a little curried swampy from time to time. But that's not what I wanted to speak about. On our East Coast, sir, we are absolutely inundated with the sargassum seaweed, which is Mother Nature at the end of the day. But what Mother Nature is doing to us, and it may be affected by global warming. There are people who I've heard say, sir, that it has been the runoff of various fertilizer from South America. I've heard many different explanations as to what it might be. At the end of the day, I don't know. I think it is likely more to do with the general trends of nature. But we are absolutely inundated on the East Coast with the sargassum. And that sargassum seaweed is indiscriminate in how it kills the small fish that live on the reefs, because the sargassum comes in, it blocks all the light from the pools where the small fish are. It, I wouldn't say pollutes the beach, that's probably not the right way to say it, because it's not a man-made substance, but it makes the beaches not very friendly to us all. But so when I was thinking about the East Coast, I did notice that in Part 31 of the bill, if I get the name of it correct, the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Act, Part 31 concerned me a little bit, and I would just like to give the leader the opportunity to clarify that Part 31 of the bill is not intending to restrict Barbadians who I have seen for my 60 years now as I have enjoyed the East Coast, who on the weekends will come and collect a little bit of sea moss and go home and make this potion, which apparently has some very interesting powers. I'm not aware, but I am told that it does. But I would not like to see that Barbadian tradition of collecting sea moss in that way, unless, of course, it is endangered, in which case I would understand. But in general, it seems that Part 31 is saying that everyone who is doing that is going to need a license. And I'm not sure if that was the intention, but I'm sure that will be clarified. And that would possibly also apply to those fishermen that I see down there regularly and will be finding sea cats and other things on the reef. I don't think that is the intention, to stop that type of Barbadian lifestyle. So, sir, my only substantive point on this, and perhaps you would listen to me on it carefully, is I am concerned that there is no specific mention in here that I can find, and it is a large bill, so please excuse me if I have missed the specific mention of it, is the use of what I understand to be called seine nets, which are these nets that I see on the West Coast. And you see sometimes 10, 12, maybe 15 guys, maybe it's guys and girls, I maybe only see men, who use these nets in the near shore on our reef. And these nets are indiscriminate in what they catch, sir. They encircle a reef and everything is caught. Every species is caught. Everything is damaged. I see no specific prohibition of that practice, which is unnecessary and it is indiscriminate, and I feel it should be addressed. I would like to suggest that possibly Article 18.1, which reads, "No person shall hunt, capture, possess, trade in, intentionally kill, injure, or harass any endangered species." Now, the challenge with that is I have to look to what is an endangered species. So I found in the interpretation the definition under Article 2 of an endangered species, which they describe as extremely high risk of extinction in the near future. Now, the challenge with that might be is that there may be millions of examples of what I call schoolmistresses somewhere else in Indonesia, but they are in danger of extinction in Barbados if this kind of indiscriminate catching goes on. So I'm not sure exactly what the interpretation in Article 2 was meant to mean by extremely high risk of extinction in the near future. Was that globally, or was that just in our waters? Because if it is just in our waters, then I think we can use Article 18.1, because when this indiscriminate, say net, if I have the word correct, pronounced correct, is used, you cannot say that you are not, in fact, because you do not know what you're going to catch on that day. You catch everything. So you may well be catching an endangered species. You may well be in breach of this law. So, sir, those really are my only comments. I am also slightly concerned about the foreign fishing vessels that I've heard about in our territorial waters, but I am not an expert. It seems that Part 24 addresses that in some way, but I could be wrong. But it may also be that Part 24 in Article 289, Clause C, we might be able to use that clause which speaks to restricting certain areas from any type of fishing. I personally am not in favor of stopping the fisherman who's standing on the beach and casting his net, or who is putting a line in the water and catching one fish at a time. But I do think that our west coast, our south coast, and our east coast, in fact, all of our coastal areas, we should be specific about what type of fishing we want to see. We need to protect those reefs. We can't be building a blue-green economy and allowing this to go on. So, sir, as I said, I am not an expert in those areas. This is the comments that I make on it. I think that the legislation itself is far-reaching. It is complicated. It has been put together by, obviously, some very good experts. With those few words, I endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Malalu. Senator King.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I shan't be long because this has been very extensively done prior. But there are a couple of things that I want to just share with those listening to us. I see this as a great opportunity for Barbados to begin to tap into an area which I think for many years we've left just to be there. We take it for granted, and that is the ocean. The ocean offers us numerous opportunities, and I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, we debated a bit on the resources that are beneath those waters and putting things in place where we could exploit and use them for economic gain. I see this as part and parcel of us, again, doing that. One of the things that people have been talking about for many, many years is that the economy needs to diversify. And I see this legislation as being part and parcel of putting standards in place for just that, the diversification of what we are capable of doing. When you talk about fishing in itself, that has been, for many years, seen as, you know, just something that people do almost like entertainment, a gig, like a gig economy. No real structure to it. It's just person decides I want to be a fisherman, I come out of a line of families that were fishermen, and we do that. And now here we have the opportunity to say, okay, let's put some things in place where it becomes a little more standardized. There are opportunities for persons who, like what happened recently when a number of fishermen lost their livelihoods due to not being able to have insurance and all of those sort of things. This gives us the opportunity now to correct a number of those things and to help those persons along. But it also offers us opportunities to work with the global community. And I listened very carefully when Senator Malilu spoke about the engagement with foreign vessels. And as the world becomes as insular as it is these days, Barbados is taking a very bold step to reach out to the communities. Even when I look through the legislation and it's talk about licensing trawlers. I remember as a young man listening to, but then I was really young, but listening to my grandfather and others arguing about, I believe, and I speak subject to correction, but I believe they were talking about Asian trawlers that were coming through the Caribbean at that time. This must have been probably mid-70s, early 80s. And the argument was that they were coming through the Caribbean unregulated, moving large catchments of fish and leaving the Caribbean fishermen depleted of the resources that by inherently should be ours. And so if we're going to regulate these things and be able to work with these different partners, one of the good things that I can see happening is the transformation of knowledge. And that gives our fishermen and the persons involved in fisheries the chance to collaborate with others to ensure sustainability for these fishing communities that we have. You also, from a heritage standpoint, the sea has been part and parcel of our heritage for as long as I can remember. Not only just in terms of fishing, but also in terms of recreation. And in this legislation, it speaks a little bit about recreational fishing. And that struck me also because I thought to myself, okay, when we're talking about recreational fishing, are we talking about persons who take people out to do that type of fishing and make money from it, in terms of like people go out and do fishing as a sport rather than a business where they're thinking, but it still is a business. So that's where I have a little bit of a conundrum, a little bit of confusion, which I would hope that somewhere along the line we'll be able to straighten out that. Because that fishing that I'm talking about is part and parcel of some of the offerings that we offer to visitors when they come and they can go fishing and stuff like that. So I'm just hoping that at some point in time, I could get a little bit of clarity on that aspect of recreational fishing. But outside of that, again, sir, I see this more so as a step in the right direction for us when we start to begin the conversations, as I said earlier, of how do we deal with the insularity of the world. One of the things that we always have to think about, and it comes to the fore all the time, only when we speak about agriculture in its rawest form, and that's food security. You know, the sea offers us a lot more than just fish. It also offers us the opportunity in terms of medicine, because there are a number of studies that show that various, again, use my words very carefully, creatures that are in those waters are used in medical science. And so, again, if we're putting the regulations in place, you have to think about how do you deal with that also, because it's not just fish that people are going to eat, but the sea urchins that we call sea eggs and all of these other things, people are using them for other things. And so, again, the quotas that come into play, again, as a youngster, I remember well when, well, for me at that time, it seemed like the first set of quotas came in talking about sea eggs. We had to do that because the stocks were being depleted. And in traveling through the Caribbean, I then realized that while our stocks were being depleted here in Barbados, in other parts of the world, you were seeing sea eggs washing it all over the place. And so now, if we begin this particular process, I'm hoping that in those collaborations that I spoke about earlier that we are seeking to do by allowing others to come in, that we may be also able to go into territories that don't use sea eggs and to be able to bring those in and satisfy our market also. And so I want to commend the government on taking these particular steps because again, I go back to my original point in the beginning, many persons within the society continue to say we need to diversify, not necessarily that they give any ideas as to how to do it, but the government is taking steps to show you how we can do it by bringing this particular legislation to put things in place where even when we look at the seafoods and the processing and all of these things, these are futuristic things, looking to see, okay, we have the resources, when we begin to use them and we begin to do the processing, we do the exportation, it gives us a better chance at our own survival by the diversification of that. And sir, like I said, it wouldn't be long on it, but I just wanted to make the point that as we look at this legislation, there are a number of things within here that are futuristic, and it says that we are preparing to move from one position of how we view fishing into another one with a broader scope to being able to contribute to the economy in a more significant way, using the resources of the sea. With those few words, I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator King. Her Honor, Senator Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I should like to start, if I may, sir, by congratulating the Chief Fisheries Officer, Dr. Shelley Cox, her deputy, Mr. Parker, and all of those who are concerned in getting this significant and developmental piece of legislation before the Chamber today. People in the fishery sector work very hard because it really is an important driver of our economy and has been for many years an area of indigenous entrepreneurship from which many Barbadians have derived significant benefit, sent children to school, moved themselves from poverty upward, and which has allowed them to live with a sense of dignity and well-being. So I congratulate those who work within the context of the ministry in giving support to the sector, and indeed then to all of those who work in the sector. I would want to start by looking at some of the measures and provisions of the new legislation, and then cast my net wider to make some tangential points. First of all, sir, the new legislation really can be described as revolutionary in its design because it is intended to carry the sector forward and to take it from where it is now to where it needs to go in the context of sustainable growth. In that regard, sir, I think I shouldn't go further unless I also congratulate the Barbados Labour Party government. The reality is that if you look at the history of fisheries and the fisheries sector in Barbados and fisherfolk, the support for fisherfolk in Barbados, there is no political organization that has done more for the sector, starting with the socio-economic development at Oistins, and moving from there to the upgrading of markets across the country in both urban and rural Barbados, And then, sir, dealing with fish landing sites, it was the Barbados Labour Party that brought the first comprehensive legislation for fisheries into being and transitioned the sector from small day boats or boats that could only do simple catches just off the coast to those that were able, properly mechanized, properly outfitted with storage facilities that could go out and seriously do deep sea fishing and bring back in large catches to improve the income and potential for providing food and nutrition security for the country. So really, sir, this builds on the foundation that the Barbados Labour Party has established for the fisheries sector, for fisher folk in Barbados. And I'm very happy to see that this is a tradition and a priority for poor Barbadians and working class Barbadians. And you would know a lot, sir, having once represented a community that has a strong fishing tradition and still does in Silver Sands. In fact, sir, I had the honor and pleasure of going out with Stephen and the fishermen from Silver Sands. I remember I asked them to take me out and they laughed at me because they didn't think I was serious. So they said, well, we left here 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you're here, you could go. And when they got there, to their surprise, I was on the beach waiting, and they looked at each other, and then they looked at me to say, you can swim? Because they got swim out to the boat. I said, I can handle myself. And out we went to the boat. They helped me on, and I spent the day fishing with the fishermen from Silver Sands. I have to tell you, that gave me new respect for the way they worked as a team to land their catch, to get it into the boat, the care with which they took to get the catch back. And really, I recognize the extent, you know, you eat something, or like many Bajan dishes, you eat a conky and you enjoy it. You don't know the amount of work that has gone into grating, to finding all the ingredients, to singeing the leaves and so on. I did not truly appreciate how really difficult a job it was, and the extent to which it was physically demanding really required serious coordination and understanding, which they taught me that day, of the movement of fish, because I was standing there and they would get very excited and I couldn't understand, but they were picking up subtle changes in the water that allowed them to determine how the fish were running and therefore in which direction they should carry the boat and so on. So I want to thank the fishermen of Silver Sands for giving me that experience. In fact, sir, the night before I was fired from the cabinet in 1999, I actually was in Silver Sands, liming with the fishermen at the famous shop there. Sorry? Yes. Liming there with the fishermen, not knowing what fate was before me in less than 24 hours. But that's another story for another time and another place. I don't think there's any danger of that. So I was making the point that the legislation is revolutionary. I was sidetracked by trying to provide other information, which does have some value and benefit. But going back then to the actual legislation, you will note, sir, that it provides for new data capture approaches, which provide accurate information on recorded landings and reporting that better reflect two things: the contribution of the fisheries sector to national GDP, which may well be underrated and undervalued. And second, it really allows us to track what is happening with fish stock and with fisheries, because we don't know how many juveniles are caught, what is the state of the sector, what is the state of particular stocks of fish, whether they're being depleted or not, at what rate, what are the growth rates of juveniles and so on, based on catches being taken. So that level of monitoring will also protect the fishermen and ensure that they're able to get better catches, because we will know what they're taking and whether stocks are having the opportunity to replenish properly or whether they're being depleted and so on. If we are going to grow the sector and introduce new and development thrusts, it is imperative that there will be appropriate staff to help to carry the work, and in that regard, the staffing of the Fisheries Division is expected to be increased and to include vessel inspectors, which you will appreciate, sir, was there was a very high need for post-barrel since there were so many damaged boats to be inspected and assessments made. So going forward, I think that this is a skill and a capacity that really needs, the ministry needs to have at a higher and increased level. Vessel monitoring systems under this legislation are now mandatory, and this will help not only in assessing catches, but helping to determine where fishing fleets are, and in fact, if they are in danger or in crisis, if they are going out of national boundaries and straying into other people's coastal waters, which has been, or territorial waters, which has, you know, has been an ongoing challenge with some of our neighbors, but really also being able to track the boats so that you can tell if a boat is in danger, can actually save lives. We have had fishermen lost at sea for days, and we have had some die because of an absence of technology that allows us to know where the fleet is at any particular time. In truth, sir, this will also have another benefit, and that is in relation to drug interdiction and the monitoring and of activity of that type. If you know where the boats are, you know what they're fishing for. Equally, the bill treats to the issue of seafood processors, and I'm mentioning it now because it was picked up by other speakers, but I will come back to that in my comments later on. There is a dearth, Mr. President, of shipwrights in Barbados. This is now a dying skill. I am told that there are only 5 active persons in Barbados who are playing this, who are artisans or who are experts in this field at the moment. And this opens the opportunity for training of young people coming out of BCC, or young people who are good with their hands, who have an interest in marine and sea life and in construction, to get into this new field. The skill of being shipwrights is one that can be used not just in Barbados, but anywhere in the world. It is a skill that can be used throughout the Caribbean, where there is also a dearth of this particular skill. So the opportunity to benefit young people and some older ones who may want to take up something like this. And in fact, you know, fishing is a tradition in families. There are families that have made a living in fishing for generations in Barbados, and there may be some younger members who are not actually interested in going into the actual fishing activity, but could still benefit from the fishing industry by making contributions or getting into activities of this ilk. The bill, sir, will also allow for the expansion of the industry by underpinning it with science, the use of data for informed decision-making and planning, and allowing information that will itself be helpful to those in the industry. Furthermore, Mr. President, I think that it really calls on us to have a national discussion about where we want to see the fishing industry and the fishing fleet go. Yes, we have the upgraded boats over those that were present during the Tom Adams administration, but what is the next step in boat building? How are we going to have boats fueled by alternative fuels rather than by diesel and fossil fuels? What will it take to invest in those boats and have a fishing fleet that is modern, that is using alternative power, that is more environmentally friendly than the existing fleet? And in fact, the damage which was sustained and the losses which were sustained as a consequence of Beryl really provide an opening for a transition of the fleet, or a majority of the fleet, from the old type fossil fueled boats to newer, more modern powered boats and facilities. You know, there was a time, if you had considered, you would never have thought that you would drive up and see motor cars plugged in at various places of entertainment and people's houses and in random car parks, but that is now becoming routine. And where the industry is going to go, I mean, now they're talking about running planes on biofuels and so on. So it will be interesting to see. In fact, the truth is that if we really had venture capitalists here, somebody would be paying others to experiment with old cooking oil and other fuels as a possible biodiesel or alternative fuel source for fishing boats. And that way, all the oil that is used at oysters to fry the fish at night, sir, can then be put back in, recycled, and transformed into another usable commodity that helps to create virtuous environmental circles and cycles and keeps the industry, allows the industry to be more sustainable, reduces the amount of waste that is generated and so on. So here is yet another opportunity that is not now being looked at, that this legislation could open up an opportunity for. Some time ago, sir, and I move now to the point that while fisher folk have done well on primary production, on catching fish, bringing in the catch, people will clean it and make money from that, and then you sell the catch and others clean down the market. So you have that cycle. The fishing industry also generates a tremendous amount of waste. You go up to the market and you can see a dolphin skinned, and the skin's just thrown aside. And not just dolphins, other fish as well. There was a time at which I knew that the ministry had been looking at the production, I think with funding from the Italian government, if I'm not mistaken, the production of fish leathers. And I had the opportunity to see some of the leathers produced from dolphin skins. They were beautiful. They were high quality. I saw myself, sir, with a dolphin skin handbag, to tell you the truth. No, I did. I saw myself with a couple, sir, in various colors. But sir, the point that I'm making is all of that wastage really can be transformed into revenue generation if we are prepared to move from beyond the primary product into tertiary product and processing in a different kind of way, to open up new industries. And this is something that we could make a good living from. There is a high-end market out there that will be prepared to pay good money for products from fish leathers, because it will be novel in the marketplace. And really, we should be pursuing that equally. I don't think that we really produce any significant amount of fish nuggets. If you want to serve fish bites at a function, which a lot of people do, you have to buy steak fish and cut it up yourself, which is very, very labor intensive. Whereas we really should be selling fish chunks and fish bites ready. Some should be ready seasoned. We should be doing things like, if you go into supermarkets in Europe and the United States, you get things like salmon, which is, you know, raw. We don't serve, and although sushi is such a big thing, we don't serve raw fish. We don't sell raw fish in the market. We don't see that as a product or sale opportunity, whereas it should be. You can get things like mackerel ready prepared in other supermarkets outside of the Caribbean with pepper and herbs and so on. That can happen with fishes that we catch here, especially when they are gluts. Fish fingers, they just like a lot of salted cod, salt fish, but we do not salt the fish here in Barbados, whereas we could, especially in glut times. I don't know if there are glut times these days, sir, but in theory, this is something that could be done. Because we have to look at the sustainability of the market. We have to look at the extent to which we can really extract large profits or every single capacity or opportunity for profit from particular fish products, and how we are going to expand it to help those currently in the industry. And let's face it, there are people in the industry who have made good money. This should be at the next opportunity investment for them. And they should be the ones to carry this and to increase their profit level and to expand the industry for the country. With that, sir, I move to the issue of insurance. It is critical that persons who have fishing boats get insurance. Insurance is available. It is just very expensive. But the reality is, sir, whatever is your basket and hole, you have to protect it. And if you are generating profits and revenues from a boat, then you have a right to insure your boat. You cannot be throwing up your hands and say, oh, there was me, the boat mash up. You have to protect your asset. You have to protect your income. You have to protect your family. And it may be expensive, yes, to insure the boat, but the boat is going to make back money. So you cannot be running boats, making profit using them, and then refusing to insure them and expecting that the public must pay an increased amount for fish because you did not have insurance and now have to buy a new boat. And I'm sorry, I know that that is not going to necessarily be a popular opinion, but it happens to be mine. It is not the Labour Party's, it is Liz Thompson. So any blame, you can blame me, but that is my view. Senator Malulu spoke about the matter of sargassum. I think research has now been done that shows or suggests that the sargassum really is a climate-related phenomenon resulting from wind directions and well, I can't remember what was suggested, but wind direction moving sargassum into our region, and then favorable currents and conditions allowing the growth, the exponential growth that we have seen now. But, sir, I've said before that, again, here, I think there's an opportunity for revenue generation. We know that when you mix seaweed into cow's feed, that their, what do they call it? The methane production from their constant burping, what's that called? I can't remember, sir. Is significantly reduced. And therefore, there's an opportunity for us to have animal feed using the sargassum seaweed, which will then have spill-on benefits at the level of climate change, because methane production from livestock is a significant source of pollution, and if things can be done that reduce that level of pollution, that would certainly be beneficial in terms of our climate crisis and the way in which we are looking to for multidisciplinary ways of addressing the climate crisis. So I think that this is, rather than complaining about the extent to which sargassum is a nuisance, and it is, sir, that we should try to see how we can use it for further revenue generation, and perhaps those who make money in real estate or other areas who might have a few spare dollars should take the opportunity to have those kinds of investments, sir. I move, sir, to, how much more time do I have? Okay, thank you. I move, sir, to a few final points. In June of 2023, the United Nations agreed a new international instrument relating to the maritime or to the marine environment, usually called BBNJ for short, but the expanded name would be Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction. So you see why BBNJ, sir. And while the BBNJ, excuse me, establishes a legal framework for marine biodiversity, plant and animal life, and other resources within the maritime environment beyond national jurisdiction. The reality is that there will be some, I don't want to say collision, so perhaps intersection might really be a better word. There will be some intersection with existing legal frameworks for the management of marine protected areas and other related areas between the BBNJ framework and existing legal frameworks. And therefore, I think it is incumbent on those who work in the industry to try to develop some understanding of what BBNJ is about, possible implications for the fishing industry. And sir, it has been noted, just to take a little tangential sidestep, it has been noted here, rightfully so, that the Caribbean suffers and has significant adverse impacts to its fishing stocks from boats belonging to other countries which come down here for tuna and other fishes. In fact, they come, they do the fishing, and they have feeder boats waiting to take back the fish stocks to these other international markets as quickly as possible. And we have not the capacity, which they know well, and therefore exploit these loopholes and deficiencies. We do not have the capacity to police our waters, to stop them from doing this. So we are losing not just revenues, but we are losing fish stock, and we are not aware of size, rate of catches, juveniles, mature. We have no idea what is being taken because we are not policing it. We are not informed, we don't know, they don't tell us, and we derive no benefit. And this is a matter of great concern, and I think that we are going to have to start to develop capacity to do the kind of policing that protects our economic interests and protects our blue economy in that regard. Going back to the point then about the BBNJ, so that agencies responsible for BBNJ at the national and international and regional level are going to have to interact more and with existing management frameworks and those areas in the region which might constitute marine protected areas, and there may be some sense of overlap between the BBNJ and these existing frameworks at this stage, because the legislation is, the convention is new and Barbados is not yet a signatory, sir, although I understand we are moving in that direction, and rightly so, because BBNJ does protect our economic interests. Other Caribbean countries have signed on, and I think work is being done to make us ready to do so as well. Since this is really going to be a new legal framework, it really is important to us as a country to be able to understand where it is taking us. I want to close, sir, on the point of the development of the blue economy. When we talk about the blue economy, at the moment, people see it in a very narrow context. But the reality is that the marine environment, maritime issues are going to become the next big area for economic exploration and exploitation. All kinds of resources, from nodules that can be used in renewable energy technologies to valuable materials of various types, as well as fishing stocks and so on, are being discovered, and new species are being discovered. But science is also telling us that there are new interactions going on the ocean bed and the ocean floor that were not previously known or understood. And the reality is that if we are going to be able to benefit, we have to have scientists invested in doing the work and the research that allows us to protect our national interests. It has become very popular to speak of Barbados and countries in our region, countries in the Pacific, that used to be called, that are called, identified in the multilateral system as small island developing states. It is becoming increasingly popular to refer to them as large ocean states. I wish to make 2 points in that regard as I close, sir. The first is, every time I hear people talk about a large ocean state, I get very nervous, because the multilateral system recognizes small island developing states. A large ocean state has no meaning in the context of the multilateral system. So if you are going to develop protections, resources, benefits, etc., for small islands, small developing islands, then it has to be done in the context of SIDS. It cannot be done in the context of an entity or a framework, a concept that does not exist in the multilateral system. Barbados, as the birthplace of the SIDS agenda, has a responsibility to ensure that SIDS and protections for SIDS continue to exist in the multinational language, in the multinational space, in multinational frameworks, and in multinational texts. If we start talking about large ocean states without establishing any particular meaning for it, just a concept, what you can possibly do is allow those who want to get rid of protections for SIDS, of resources for SIDS, to stop the recognition of the peculiar vulnerabilities of SIDS. What you are essentially doing is creating the wedge to open the door to allow them to erode the SIDS agenda. What then is the blue economy beyond fishing? We have to define it. We have to define it in our socio-economic context. We have to define it in our political context. But if we feel that the blue economy has to do with large ocean states, then we must determine who or what a large ocean state is. What it means to be a large ocean state. What legal characteristics will it have? What peculiar definitions will the large ocean states carry? What will be its interrelationship with small island developing states? Would you say SIDS/LOS? In new documents, is that how we want to see it framed? Because we can't just talk about it. We have to frame it out. We have to give it tangibility and meaning. And I want then, sir, to close on this final point. Very final, sir. Yes, sir. Very final. For some time, sir, there has been recognition of forests in the international system. And there are mechanisms for the protection and funding and looking at the relationship of carbon benefits or carbon trading benefits for forests because they represent carbon sinks. REDD, R-E-D-D acronym, and REDD plus are those frameworks in the multinational, multilateral system. It is scientifically known and understood that oceans are significant carbon sinks, but no commensurate instrument has been developed for oceans. And if it were, small island developing states could benefit significantly because our maritime or marine space, or EEZs, are significantly larger than our terrestrial space. But we are not benefiting from such large ocean space being part of our national territory. And therefore, as we talk about the blue economy, how do we so exploit these large ocean spaces for our benefit? But more than that, how do we have placed in the international sphere recognition and value for the fact that these tiny land masses are contributing significantly to carbon sinking with their maritime territory? And if that is a fact, why should we not be compensated for it, or to be able to access funding on the basis of climate protection, climate mitigation, and climate adaptation based on the size of your maritime space and the importance then to your blue economy? It is a concept which has been running through my head for years, but which we need to concretize, because in the same way that forests are protected, and we don't have the land mass to have large forests, but have just as effective carbon sinks in our maritime space, then in the same way that those countries with forests benefit, equally those with large ocean spaces should be looking to have a mechanism in the international sphere which recognizes us. I conclude, sir. I am delighted to be able to have made these few words on this matter of the legislation before the chamber. I end as I began by congratulating all concerned by bringing it for us, and I look forward to working in my capacity as Ambassador for Climate Change, Law of the Sea, and Small Island Developing States, in working with the excellent agents of the ministry in doing their work in this sphere. Mr. President, sir, I am obliged to you.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Senator, the Most Honorable Ambassador Henrietta Thompson. Senator Dr. Moroni.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me start, first of all, by thanking all of the honourable senators who would have spoken on the bills before us. In particular, let me thank the Deputy Madam President for bringing the weight of her extensive experience, both when she would have also been Minister with the government, but also as well in her current roles. The experience and being able to tie what it is that we are doing now with what is happening internationally and with the international debates and circumstances is extremely important. And also as well for her identifying areas in which we can look to extract greater value from what is already being done. And I believe, as she would have indicated, she will be working closely with the ministries and with the relevant authorities to also lend the weight of her experience and certainly her voice within the international sphere to these efforts as well. To Senator Malalu, thank you so much as well for your contribution. And just to respond to a couple of things, it has been identified that, in fact, there is provision in the regulations for the banning of chubbing using, I don't know how to pronounce it, the sans nets. I'm like you, scenes? Scene nets. Yes, so there is within the regulations itself. But I also, as well, wanted to identify that at Article 333, which I found very interesting, 1E, that it does make provision for this, and this talks about marine living resources crime, and it does indicate that for the purpose of this act, marine living resources crime is anyone that does an harm to fish and other marine living resources, whether by the over-exploitation of target stocks. And then when you go against the definition, the target over-exploitation speaks to when you undertake practices that will lead to depletion, etc., of the stock, and as you've identified as well on Article 18. But I believe that within the entirety of the Act and its provision in relation to compliance, its provision in relation to the Advisory Council, and as well the development of the Fisheries Management Plan, that it then makes space for when circumstances happen that then we will be able to address as necessary. But like I said, there is provision within the regulations itself. In relation to the issue of the CMOS cultivation, Senator Malalu, I'm very happy that I can say to you that you can, what the law allows, still go and have your couple of CMOS and others like you. The legislation is not intended, with the Honourable Senator, to prohibit that. If you look at it at the Article 303, it talks about the establishment of a program known as the Barbados CMOS Cultivation Program. At 304, it's CMOS harvesting. So it's really for those that are intending to invest within the CMOS harvesting at a commercial level, and not for the individual Barbadian who just want to be able to enjoy some CMOS, as we would do for all of the reasons that CMOS, and particularly men, would want to be able to enjoy. And I'm not picking on any particular man in this honourable chamber. I am looking over here, as I should, I gotta look in the corner. I gotta look in the corner. Mr. President tells us that on the aside, he makes a very good CMOS, so that he might be willing to share with some of those who might need it as well. I hear a loud clearing of throats. But no, Mr. President, I think as we've already heard as well, just in relation to, again, the issue of the sargassum weed, and I know, and I believe I'm correct to indicate that I know that the ministry has been working, I believe, with some universities, etc., and some partners in order to look at alternative uses for the sargassum as well. So research is ongoing, and I know that there's actually already been some experimentation in relation to its use in makeup, and cosmetics, in particular, as well. Oh, that's why we should get Rihanna. And just the final thing as well, just in relation to the foreign vessels, I think that's also been identified, but as well within the legislation, I believe at Part 13 and 14, it speaks to the registration of these international vessels, allowing us as well to be able to just make sure that we can monitor the activities and know when they are entering the waters. Again, and Senator King, as well, your identification that this is, as you've indicated, a way that we can diversify the economy. And again, the conversation about how as a country we actually value and see the importance of the sector. And I believe that one of the things that the Institute can help us with, and as we do better data collection, is be able to actually have the figures that tell us what is the level of the contribution of the sector to the economy. That thing about, what gets counted gets valued, and that is important because I am certain, Mr. President, everything that is within me suggests that this sector makes an indelible contribution in a number of different ways. And so, Mr. President, with those few words, I beg to move that the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of the bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those honourable senators against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee.
Part 1, clauses 1 through 4.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 through 4 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 through 4 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 8 to 7. Part 2, clauses 5 to 7.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 5 to 7 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 5 through 7 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 3, clause 8.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 3, clause 8 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clause 8 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 9 through 19.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 4, clauses 9 through 19 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clauses 9 through 19 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. And those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 20 to 22.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 5, clauses 20 to 22 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 20 through 22 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 23 through 27.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 6, Part 6, clauses 23 to 27 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 6, clauses 23 through 27 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 28 through 40.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 7, clauses 28 through 40 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 7, clauses 28 through 40 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 41 to 43.
Madam President, I beg to move that Part 8, clauses 41 to 43 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 8, clauses 41 through 43 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 9, clauses 44 and 45.
Madam President, I beg to move that Part 9, clauses 44 and 45 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 9, clauses 44 and 45 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 10, clauses 46 through 50.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 10, clauses 46 through 50 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 10, clauses 46 through 50 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 11, clauses 51 through 66.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 11, clauses 51 through 66 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 11, clauses 51 to 56 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 12, clauses 67 through 85. Part 12.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 12, clauses 67 to 85 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 12, clauses 67 to 85 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 13, clauses 86 to 89.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 13, clauses 86 to 89 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 13, clauses 86 through 89 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 14, clauses 90 through 122.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 14, clauses 90 through to 122 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 14, clauses 90 through 122 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 15, clauses 123 to 126.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 15, clauses 123 to 126 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 15, clauses 123 to 126 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 16, clauses 127 through 149.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 16, clauses 127 through to 149 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 16, clauses 127 to 149 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 17, clauses 150 through 186.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 17, clauses 150 through to 186 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 17, clauses 150 to 186 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 18, clauses 187 through 208.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 18, clauses 187 through to 208 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 18, clauses 187 through 208 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 19, clause 209.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 19, clause 209 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 19, clause 209 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. And those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 20, clauses 210 through 222.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 20, clauses 210 to 222 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 20, clauses 210 through 227, 22, do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 21, clauses 223 to 225.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 21, clauses 223 to 225 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 21, clauses 223 to 225 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour please say aye. Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 22, clauses 226 through 254.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 22, clauses 226 to 254 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 22, clauses 226 through 254 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 23, clauses 255 to 265.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 23, clauses 255 to 265 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 23, clauses 255 to 265 do now stand part. Clauses 255 to 265 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 24, clauses 266 to 268.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 24, clauses 266 to 268 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 24, clauses 266 to 268 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 25, comprising clauses 269 through 272.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 25, clauses 269 to 272 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 25, clauses 269 to 272 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 26, clauses 273 through 275.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 26, clauses 273 to 275 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 26, clauses 273 to 275 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 27, clauses 276 to 279.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 27, clauses 276 to 279 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 27, clauses 276 through to 279 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 28, clauses 280 to 288.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 28, clauses 280 to 288 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 28, clauses 280 to 288 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 29, clauses 289 to 291.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 29, clauses 289 to 291 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 29, clauses 289 to 291 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 30, clauses 202 to 302.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 30, clauses 292 to 302 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 30, clauses 292 to 302 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 31, clauses 303.
311. 311.
Clauses 311.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 31, clauses 303 to 311 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 31, clauses 303 to 311 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 32, clauses 312 through 322.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 32, clauses 312 to 322 do now stand part. 22.
The question is that Part 32, Clauses 312 to 322 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 33, which are clauses 323 to 332.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 33, clauses 323 to 332 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 33, clauses 323 to 332 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 34, clause 333.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 34, clause 333 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 34, clause 333 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 35, clauses 334 to 348.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 35, clauses 334 to 348 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 35, clauses 334 to 348 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 36, clauses 349 to 353.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 36, clauses 349 to 353 do now stand part.
The question is that clause 349 to 353 do now stand part. Part 36, clauses 349 to 353 do now stand part. Oh, all honourable senators in favour. Please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 37, which are clauses 354 to 379.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 37, clauses 354 to 379 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 37, clauses 354 through 379 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Will all honourable senators against please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 38, clauses 380 to 382.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 38, clauses 380 to 382 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 38, clauses 380 to 382 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 39, clauses 383 and 384.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 39, clauses 383 and 384 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 39, clauses 383 to 384 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 40, clauses 385 to 391.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 40, clauses 385 to 391 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 40, clauses 385 to 391. 391, I apologize, do now stand part. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 41, clauses 392 to 405.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 41, clauses 392 to 405 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 41, clauses 392 to 405 do now stand part. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 42, clauses 406 to 413.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 42, clauses 406 to 413 do now stand part.
Question is that Part 42, clauses 406 to 413 do now stand part. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 43, clause 414.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 43, clause 414 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 43, clause 414 do now stand part. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 44, clauses 415 to 420.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 44, clauses 415 to 420 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 44, clauses 415 to 420 do now stand part. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 45, clauses 421 to 444.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 45, clauses 421 to 444 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 45, clauses 421 through 444 do now stand part. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
The first to the fourth schedules inclusive.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the first to the fourth schedule do now stand part.
The question is that the first to the fourth.
I should say be the schedule to the bill.
Yeah.
Sorry. Madam Chair, I beg to move that the first to the fourth schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first to the fourth schedules be now the schedules to the bill. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Report.
Madam President, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
The chairman has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Act 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Act 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development, Seafood and Markets and Businesses Bill 2025 be read a second time.
Go to the next one. Okay. Order 99, Mr. President, standing in the name of the acting leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development, Seafood Markets and Businesses Bill 2025.
Senator, the Honorable Dr. Sandra Monroe-Knight.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we would have considered this bill as part of the cognate debate that we would have had, and therefore I beg to move that the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development, Seafood, Markets and Businesses Bill 2025 be now read a second time.
The question is that the Seafood Industry Management Operations and Development Act 2025 be read a second time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honour do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair and the Honourable the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee.
Part 1, clauses 1 and 2.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 1, Clauses 1 and 2 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 and 2 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 3 through 11.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 2, Clauses 3 to 11 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 3 through 11 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 12 to 16.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 3, Clauses 12 through 16 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 12 through 16 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 17 to 20.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 4, Clauses 17 through 20 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clauses 17 through 20 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say no. The ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 22 to 30.
21.
Part 5, clauses 21, beg your pardon, to 30.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 5, clauses 21 through 30 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 21 through 30 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye?
Aye.
All those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 31 to 33.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 6, clauses 31 to 33 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 6, clauses 31 through 33 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 34 to 36.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 7, clauses 34 to 36 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 7, clauses 34 through 36 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 37 to 45.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Part 8, clauses 37 through to 45 do now stand part.
The question is that Part 8, clauses 37 through 45 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
First, second, and third schedules.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the first, second, and third schedule be the schedules to the bill.
The question is that the first, second, and third schedules be now the schedules to the bill. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Seafood Markets and Businesses Act 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Seafood Markets and Businesses Act 2025. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is therefore now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Senate now adjourn for lunch and return at 3 p.m.
The question is that this will be suspended.
Suspended. My apologies, Mr. President.
Until 3 p.m. today. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting is suspended until 3 p.m. today.